God, such a lackluster good morning. Why was the party really late last night? I thought the party was tonight. Good morning, everybody. So much better. As most of you already know, I'm Shreya Krishnan. I'm going to be here through the course of today and through the awards as well. On behalf of the DSCI team, I welcome you once again to the 17th edition of NASSCOM DSCI Annual Information Security Summit. I hope you're having a great time, and the last 2 days at AISS has been an engaging and meaningful experience. Before we begin, just pull out your phones and please put them on silent. We did have a few going, hello, pick me up yesterday. Day 2 of AISS 2022 witnessed a packed inaugural followed by a book launch, gearing up for Digital Plus Plus, a host of keynotes, 2 plenary sessions, Digital Forensics, Sub-Summit, and the DSAI Innovation Box. And now, we're on day 3, the final day. Information on session schedule, speakers, networking is available on the official website, www.dsci.in/event/AISS-2022. You can also scan the QR codes available outside every hall or on your desks for the detailed agenda and conference handbook. Visit the exhibition booths of our partners in Startup Pavilion by National Center of Excellence. There are various contests running at multiple exhibitor booths, so make sure you visit 44, 35, 13, 7, that's where the goodies are, and all of the others as well for some exciting, interesting things that are happening. We request you to keep sharing your updates and experience on social media using the official hashtag #AISS2022, and mention @DSCI_Connect on Twitter. So we will begin with today's proceedings in a little while. Just sit back and relax, and we'll get back in a couple of minutes. Okay, opening with the first session for the day, the first plenary, and this is centered around the topic, breach ramifications, a multi-front battle, customer, media, regulators, security agencies, and citizens. And to deliver the session, it's my privilege to introduce to you all our esteemed panel of speakers, Mr. Jaspal Singh Sone, Global CISO, Tata Communications, Mr. Samir Ratholikar, Senior Executive Vice President and CISO, HDFC Bank, Mr. Arvind Sharma, APJ Enterprise Technology Specialist, Trellix, Mr. Ashish Upreti, Leader, India and SARC, Magnet Forensics. And to moderate the session, we'd like to invite Dr. Sanjay Bal, Director General, CERT-IN. May I request you all to please join us on stage and take your seats. Can we have a huge round of applause for our opening plenary? Over to all of you.
Good morning. Faint people. Breakfast, not had breakfast or not had tea or coffee? What is it? Okay, so this session is on breach ramifications, a multi-front battle, customer, media, regulators, security agencies, and citizens. So let me start with the basics. What is a breach? Anyone? We're talking about breach ramifications, so what is a breach? Guys, you're sitting in a cyber security summit, I thought. Yes. Anyone else? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, data has been lost with, with your permission, with you knowing about it, or what? Without permission, without your knowledge. So confidentiality is gone. So that's the basic definition for breach. So having said that, I'm going to change the format a bit. So we've got a great panel here. It's my job to only throw questions here and there to them, and they are the experts, all the Gyanis. They will explain to you whatever is required. So I'm going to have you guys ask the first question. So someone from the audience is going to ask the first question to the panel, and then we'll see how it goes. So let's get you guys woken up. Who's asking the first question? All right, go ahead. So maybe Jaspal, you can start off.
Thank you. I'm audible. Good morning. So I think in breach you learn a lot of new things, and what would be most scary is to find out more about your critical assets, your crown jewels, which were not adequately taken care, getting breached, possibly on some public cloud, hosted somewhere where not adequate assessments, not adequate classification, etc. was done. And I think to me what's most vital is being able to quickly restore back the service first. And then, of course, all the other things which you mentioned. Maybe pass over to others for more opinions.
Let Ashish take the next.
I think what I'm going to say here is, the fact that we are scared about it is scary in itself. The reason being, it's almost like, driving a car and wearing a seat belt only when the cop is around. Actually, the fact is we have to make this as a habit. I mean, this is not something that we should be scared of. I mean, the regulations will come in. But the fact that, we have to implement this for our own, the ramification that we're speaking about here is, the loss of reputation. It could be your data, which is, everything in your organization. So rather than being scared of the impact, I think it has to be a habit, a continuous process that we need to implement and going to the basics.
So Samir, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. Good morning, guys. Good question, fundamental. The first question which comes to mind is the impact of the breach, okay? Because what is lost? What is the impact on me? Me in a sense, as a team. And what about the business continuity aspects? So I think these are the 2-3 immediate questions which crops up in our mind, at least from the BFSI perspective, because it's all about customer data, right? And then, the further analysis, communication to the board, your InfoSec committee, etc., the follows those processes. But yeah, to answer to your questions, this is, I think, the first couple of thoughts which immediately comes to mind.
Arvind?
I don't want to say this on a lighter note, but what should be a CISO afraid of? I think it's their job. And that's a reality. A couple of years back, there was a survey done in America. What is the average time span a CISO spends in an organization? And that was around 1.5 years. So the point I want to make is the kind of pressure that team goes through to survive that kind of breaches which are happening day in, day out, that's also not easy, right? When we say, okay, we've detected a breach, but that breach might have happened months back, right? So how do we understand the scope of that breach that we've just detected, right? And how would that impact us from a team perspective who's detected it now, right? So that's a lot of pressure, right? So that's my input to it. It's not an easy job to detect those threats.
Great. I think you got some answer, and as rightly mentioned, ramifications of a breach could be in terms of a financial loss, reputational damage, legal and regulatory compliance issues, loss of trust and confidence, and also because personal consequences might be involved. So what happens to an individual, etc. So there are challenges, and as rightly mentioned, if the job is there for 1.6 years, so I don't know how many jobs you jump, and so you become a veteran in handling breaches, that means. So from one organization to another, so you are only handling breaches. But if that is the case, going forward, how do you learn from these breaches? What are the learnings you take? And how do you implement those? You want to take a shot at that, Jaspal?
Sure. I think I would say Rome is not built in a day, and every breach is an excellent opportunity to add some learnings and add the recommendations, whether they are internal as part of your incident investigation, or if there is an external audit or whatever. This often leads to certain areas, certain very specific things being pointed, which should be then turned into an opportunity to add more capability into your overall security strategy. Of course, all of us think of what are the right things to be covered on any given day, but incidents are real, and they do happen, and they do point that there are gaps, and it's just right that we take those findings in the right light and build further on our security capability.
So Arvind, do you want to add something?
I think most of the things are definitely covered. I would just say learning becomes faster when there's collaboration, right? So one person cannot share all the intelligence of or their experience of a breach that they detected earlier. If they collaborate with the team, that becomes a faster learning. So we should not depend on only one team to share their learnings. It should be a collaborative approach to share their. It could be from a technology perspective, people, processes perspective, right? So sharing that learning helps the organization be more mature.
Samir?
Yeah, so nothing more exactly to add here, but maybe I want to add a couple of points on a connected pointers. Look, there are huge learnings out of any breach or any incident, even for that matter in event as well. So I think periodically, if you do the tabletop simulations of the breaches, of the incidents, that gives us immense opportunity or the pointers for us to tweak our playbooks and act effectively as a collaboration, one team in case of actual crisis. So maybe, pure play breach, complete manifestation of the incident, and, a tabletop simulations on a regular basis. I think a marriage of these tools will give us fantastic inputs in terms of how to handle it effectively without getting into much stress or worry, and handle it as a one team, in the quickest possible time.
Do you want to add something?
Yeah. Just a point to add here is I think the only positive that comes out of a breach is it makes us all wiser. In 90% of the cases, security stack has been updated, and robust security measures has been taken into consideration only after the breach. The management then looks at it from a perspective of investment rather than a recurring cost. And the blame, I would say one thing that also needs to change is the blame that the CISO carries after a breach has happened. He carries it with him. I mean, the next any organization that he goes to after, I mean, an average of 1.5 years, and people would really come back to him saying that, okay, you were the same guy where a breach happened. So that also needs to change. I mean, the blame is not just on an individual, but it is an organization that needs to, implement the security measures. Yep.
So what? So
So I think on the point on blame and trust, this is a very vital sort of a thing from an incident. And my colleagues have spoken about the trust what needs to be reinforced back in the CISO organization, but equally alike, an incident and the right handling of incident is also a great opportunity for the CISO team to come together with other business units, whether it's operations, whether it's technology, and create this camaraderie between the teams that becomes the foundation for a stronger trust even after the incident. I think that's a very important point, and how you handle the incident would determine whether after the incident you come out stronger or there is a greater divide continuing on the journey of pointing fingers on what led to the incident. So I think the software aspects of handling incidents are as important as the technology which goes behind mitigating, preventing and detecting it.
that's an important point. Just while talking about there could be a creation of a security divide. We hear about digital divide, so he's talking about a security divide that may be getting in, or we may become stronger. And what I hear from Ashish is there is a need and requirement for a culture change. Basically, there's a challenge from a culture perspective. So organization culture has to change, and that will happen when your individual culture changes. But I also heard from him about a stack and others talking about technology, etc. So maybe we'll ask you about what sort of a technology stack are organizations trying to put in place, to handle something like a breach? Or are you saying that a stack is only put after the breach happens? So throw some light on that.
I think I would talk from the perspective of the small and medium enterprises on whatever little experience I have on the corporate side. There is too much emphasis on the EDR solutions. I feel, it is important to updated stack. What was the tools and technology which were relevant pre-COVID era would not be relevant now. So there is a constant need to update. But again, on the defense side, we are still doing okay. The problem that I see here is on the response. Right? There is very little focus on the digital forensics and incident response side, where I think I was reading a recent report of from IBM where they said that an average breach detection and response time is about 9 months, and bringing this time to about 7 months would save about 1.2 million in dollars. But again, the cost to a particular breach is not relevant because it's a long-term process, and the time lost in coming back to where you were, if you calculate that cost, it's huge. So I think there is a need to use the AI and automation where the simplest task which happens on day-to-day basis can be automated, and your resources or our resources can focus more on the the important or put more emphasis on the tasks that are actually impacting the organization on a bigger scale.
Samir, do you want to add something from the banking perspective? What sort of a technology stack may help?
Look, banks are the compliance-driven institutions. So naturally, it is well expected that the complete technology stack has to be there in place to serve the internal and external needs. So I think in that sense, there is a fair amount of maturity in terms of creating that layer of defense, because regularly you goes the auditing, even by the regulators, periodically they come, inspect your setup to make sure that, whether it is in line with the policy requirements, RBI guidelines, etc. And then there is going to be a continuous improvement which is expected by you, which again goes through validation exercise during the next audit. So it's a fairly well-defined, well-formulated process in the banks. And I think, there is a fair amount of maturity.
Just what do you say from a telecom perspective, because I think you are the ones who are handling the maximum stuff.
So I think I'll just take a slightly, a side view on this. And besides the technology stack and adding more functionality in your security capabilities, I feel identifying where your critical processes lie, where your critical systems lie, and where your vital data lies. I think that's the biggest challenge for most large organizations. And one way to try to stay on top of this is to regularly incorporate some of the cyber crisis management type drills as part of your larger business continuity efforts. That's a great way to test it end to end and create scenarios where you assume part of your data or part of your systems or part of your operations is impacted through a cyber breach, and that brings in quite a lot of visibility into where the gaps are, and then you could slowly, steadily address this.
You want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add probably 2 quick points. One is our approach, how we look for an upgrade in the technology stack is whatever evaluation we are doing, a red team activity, blue team activity, and so on. The approach should be towards adding on to what we've already invested in, rather than replacing something which did not do well in a particular test, right? I see that organizations do not sometimes do not value that particular investment, and then look for probably the wrong use of word here is blame, right? It should be from a maturity perspective, how we can make that technology more mature. And there are enough examples around this. So second point is around, there are centers like NIST and, Mindray and framework and so on, which are good, frameworks which can help an organization move towards that technology maturity, right? So how we evaluate those technologies and what is the path we take while maturing those technologies are already set. It's just that, we take those as the frameworks, choose a framework which meets our requirement from an organization perspective, and help use that to mature us.
Great. I think most of the guys are now busy on their mobiles, catching up on their emails, early morning emails. So I think now it's time again to go back to the audience and shake them up a little bit. Next question from you guys. Yes.
We all understand. I'm Lalit from Infosys. The evolution of the security tools, technologies has been always ongoing process. Is there a time or is there a process that's going on? Should we rethink the entire setup? Should we relook at the day that internet is born or the new internet that should be there? What do we do in terms of handling breaches? The moment that there is a footprint of data of an individual, how do we put security, privacy in place on day one that the person is born? Is there some process that should be thinking to, what do we redo what we have done so far, so that at least for the future, we are relooking at the entire security, privacy, data breaches. Otherwise, every day there is a new attack, right? Every day there is a new breach.
So excellent question. I think that's why, as I mentioned in the beginning, we've got great guys here, all thinkers. So they will give us some good answers. Why don't you start?
Thanks for the question. Probably I would say let's start from empowering the data owners. If the data owners know that how they can, they can secure the data that is critical for this organization, I think that is a good place to start with. And make sure their data is labeled properly, is classified properly, so that in case, so first of all, we should know that where the critical data is. The organization would know that only if the data owners have marked it properly, right, have classified them properly. So I think we should start with that, so that, because there would be breaches, but there would be breaches which might not have very large ramifications, right? But if there is a critical asset which gets leaked, that's the major ramification that we fear. So if we know where our critical data is, how that data is classified, and the organization can then put some perimeter level securities, or even at the core they can have those layer securities which can help that data and protect that data. I think that's a good approach to have. So we should start from data owners.
I think his question is that if you rethink the internet itself, rather than what you have today, then what are you going to be doing? So from a futuristic perspective, so do you want to take a jab at that?
I mean, see, what I like to say here, and based on a lot of things that we've already covered, there's no silver bullet, and I know. I mean, at some point of time, we have to concentrate on going back to the basics. No one size fit all, but the good start here is we need to start talking about it. I see lot of people, we don't talk about it. I mean, rather than you know so the threat actors, when we talk about them, I mean, they are organized. There are people where, they have a team where you could probably hire someone to write a code. There are team of people who are basically negotiating on their behalf with the organizations. But the on the other side, we, on the defensive part are not that organized, and we have not come together. So I think the first and basic thing is start talking about it. Like Jaspal sir mentioned, that we need to have, I feel that in every communities, we should have small communities where, we should start talking about the breaches rather than sliding them under the rug.
Samir?
No, honestly, I think Arvind, Ashish, both of them, they've added good points on that. So nothing, honestly, Sanjay, anything incremental to add here?
Just well.
I'll take a slightly different take at your question, and I don't know whether this relates, but the way I look at it, when the enterprises had a fresh look at cloud adoption, I think they were exactly at the same crossroad as what you defined. They had an opportunity to do a lot of things right this time. What I see on the contrary is that people often also take cloud adoption as a means to, A, on one side, accelerate their digital ambitions, but B, at the same time, also bypass some of the typically laid governance processes which have been set for on-prem deployments and creating things in-house. Now, what this is leading to is, once again, my favorite topic. Do we really know where our data lies? Do we really know where we are running our critical systems? And with more players coming onto the game now, how do you ensure that everybody is following that basic minimum hygiene? I think, like my colleague said, in the end, it will come down to the basics. Having the right authorization, access control, the right build standards, the right DevSecOps procedures, the right security toll gates, and now orchestrating it across a much larger ecosystem of suppliers, whether external or internal. I think the thing on one side, while it may appear that it has fast-tracked our sort of digital ambitions, at the same time, I think from a security perspective, this has made the puzzle a little bit more complex. Not directly answering your question, but some of those points I believe are something similar to, if we had to redo this once again, how would we look at it?
Maybe, I don't know, you guys should think whether you need to have data obfuscation right from day one and various stuff, so that even if there is a breach, it doesn't have an impact, etc. So it all boils down to, as he rightly mentioned, to data. So if you're going to look at data, what you need to do at the atomic level of data is what you need to think of. So anyway, I think this requires a little more of debate. So in the interest of time, we can take this offline. I believe you have a question, so I'll give you the chance right now.
A breach is every CISO's nightmare. I'm Samir Dutt from Forensics Guru. Mr. Jaspal, you had mentioned, that the first step is mitigation. But how important do you see, DFIR as part of your InfoSec, landscape? That's part one of my question. Part two is, how much of your InfoSec budget is being allocated to DFR, and is it in proportion to this particular thought process?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking this question. And I often say that having a capable security incident detection response is far more than just setting up an SIEM and building up a few seats 24/7. I think Samir also mentioned, the organization's collective ability to come together and work in full collaboration without getting distracted by what typically would happen in middle of a chaos, which is the incident, that requires a lot of drills and lot of conscious attempts which are done often on a day when there is no actual incident, but you are preparing for something like that to happen, because the reality is that this is an inevitable. In the incident response, and I think incident response and the skills of an incident responder are often ignored and trivialized. We often hire people who are just about starting their security careers into security operations, because we believe that's the lowest in the order of what they would like to achieve, their personal aspirations. However, I believe for someone to be able to effectively handle an incident, he or she must have adequate experience in understanding how the operating systems run, how the specific systems in question run. And this brings us close to the point you raised about forensics and what you gather for forensics, and having the right solutions and the right sort of setup within your organization where you could sandbox, take the control and not allow others to touch important forensic evidences while the investigation is going on. It requires a lot of discipline and a lot of maturity, both from a process and a technology standpoint. I don't think this is at the current moment accorded the right level of priority and right level of budget allocations. That was your question. Some of my thoughts.
Great. I think we touched a lot on the technology front, etc. I'm wanting to shift gears to the process and people perspective. Now, whenever there is a breach, the media is going to be hounding you guys, right? Because you guys are taking care of the security in your organizations, etc. So what should be the strategy for handling the media, and what are some key points that need to be kept in mind from your playbook perspective? So let me start with you, Samir.
Well, in banks, actually, there is a department called Corporate Communications Department or a Media Management Department, and they picks up that thread and manages the complete media. That is their job. While articulating the responses to the media, of course, the CISOs and the fraud management team, the compliance team, etc., need to sit with the media communications team, the corporate communications team, to be able to draft a response which, basically doesn't reveal too much, to be very honest and transparent with you, but at the same time gives some kind of a factual status to the community out there, right? But a large question, Dr. Behel, is this is actually the front ending is done by the media communications team with the help from the CISOs, the CIOs, CTOs, etc. in the banks.
So to the media, would you be disclosing or not disclosing? What is the strategy?
No, of course, we have to disclose whatever the damage has done. I'm saying the articulation of what exactly to be covered as part of the media statement, that is their prerogative. But yes, there is no question of hiding anything, because everything is public these days, right? There is no merit in hiding anything. So we have to reveal. But as a first response, how deep one has to go, that decision tree is handled by the media folks, and later on, as discovery happens or all the milestones gets completed, there will be further, a tranche 2, tranche 3 takes place. But yes, the disclosure is always there.
Arvind?
I would have limited experience, based on my discussion with my customers, and what I see is the quick action between their legal team, their PR team, and the communications team, right? So we see that these three teams come together very quickly, sit with the CISO's team, understand, what is the scope of that, scope of that, that breach that has happened. So I see those teams coming together, and as Samir sir already said that, the communication needs to be very crisp, very clear in the very first go, right? Might not be very elaborative, but very crisp about what that scope of that breach is. Obviously, the communication needs to be very clear as well. Try not to, mince words around that. So very crisp, very clear communication with collaboration with multiple teams like legal, PR, communications, and the CISO's team.
Jaspal?
Media is an important stakeholder, and I think often there is a tendency to see media as an annoyance because there is a crisis and there is a pressure on, the incident itself. I think it takes some practice and some conscious discipline to provide media with sensible information and use them, create that sense of trust between you and the media so that the right information goes out. Is their job, they would write something. The question is, are they writing the right things or are they writing something else in absence of you giving the right message to them? So that trust needs to be built. But at the same time, I think my only request also on the media side is there is also this frenzy of trigger-happy journalism and the fastest finger first. I think the media also needs to, kind of exhibit some restraint and do some validations and not just go for the forwards and what other media houses are posting and just keep reposting.
Great. Ashish?
Limited exposure there, but I think one point that I'd like to add here is, a collaborated response. How quickly we are involving the internal team in terms of your SOC, forensics, legal, PR. The earlier the entire organization come together and there's a single response to the media, one response which goes out. I think would be important. That would be important here.
Great. I think that brings me to an interesting question based on what Jaspal mentioned is about trust. So in this whole episode of a breach, obviously the trust is broken with your stakeholders and customers, etc., whose data has gone out. So how do you repair this trust equation? And what does it take to get that trust back? So since you raised this, I'm going to start with you, Jaspal.
Sure. I think the answer to this, Dr. Bahal, lies in what went into creating that relationship between you and your customer. Since you raised the scenario of customer, I'm going to limit my thoughts on that. When the customers are signing up for services with a provider, are they looking for the cheapest proposal who provides the service? Or do they factor in that part of the request for proposal and RFIs, adequate thoughts on how do you secure their data systems and operations? And I now see a lot of RFPs coming with a dedicated security section. So that's a great indicator of maturity coming from the customer side. But what I would like to highlight is if the providers see that that's missing, I think it's equally incumbent upon them also to bring in this topic for discussion. Because in the end, you could still do the things, get that deal and start working with your customers. But if adequate security design is not built as a thought early in the design, this is going to lead to a disaster tomorrow, and then it's only going to be finger pointing and blame game. So early discussions on security by design must come in, whether it comes from the customer side or whether it comes from the provider side.
Ashish, anything?
I mean, again, Jaspal covered almost everything here, but from owning up would be important. Disclosure and owning up would be, the first and foremost and most important part of, building the trust with your customers. If we are, there's nothing. I played a video yesterday on one of the presentations that I did, and there's no way we can hide and exclude this and still feel that the customers are basically not aware of this. This will come out one way or the other.
Agreed. So what I'm wanting to find out is how do you repair this equation? So this is anyway known, whether you like it or not. So how do you repair the equation and build that trust again?
This can happen with anyone. The repairing part goes on how, I think, how serious we are on the response side and how much can we assure, our users and customers that, we are basically what we are putting into the ramification side.
Arvind?
Okay. I'll take a small example here. So a few years back, I'm taking a banking sector example here, but a few years back, a lot of banks were under tremendous phishing attacks, right? And I was talking to one of the CISOs at that time, and he was telling me that, every week I get a lot of mails from my customers giving me the phishing URLs. And hey, for your bank, here are the new phishing URLs that have come in. Now that's also hits a reputation, right? There also is the trust is at play, right? So I'm using the word trust and customers here, right? There's a customer who's telling, hey, this is the phishing URL for your bank. So the CISO said that now this has already happened. The URLs are already there. My customer already knows it. The best thing I can do now is close that gap. How quickly can I bring that down, right? So yes, there might be a trust which might get lost somewhere because of some breach. Now, this was a very, very technical example that I gave. You can bring that URL down and now you're back to where you were. Or you can go proactive, right? You can go proactive, bring in third parties, right? So that the trust is not only on you, but there's a third party who comes here, does some kind of an audit, does some kind of an evaluation of your infra, of your processes, of your tools and so on, and give that additional trust. So don't rely only on yourself in rebuilding that trust, but also third parties who can add value.
Excellent. Samir?
I think it's a multi-pronged strategy where you honestly, transparently inform and update to the customer, not only once, but on regular basis. The relationship managers of the customer, you tell them to be in touch with the customer and inform them about what efforts, for example, the banks are doing, etc. And what are the various steps the bank is putting in place, including the cyber insurance part or data recovery part, etc., etc. Third, maybe, a one-to-one communication by your top management, maybe your chief executive officer, to the customers or the SMSs or the emails, or to the calls to the selected set of customers, also give them the comfort. So I think not one, but a multi-pronged strategy involving various people on the ground and from the headquarters will definitely give a good comfort to the customer, and eventually the trust will be back. See, we can't say that today is a breach and probably in the next 10, 15 days or 1 month, customer is absolutely all right. Probably it will take, a little bit of more time to again repose the trust and make sure that he understands that yes, this is common, this is inevitable in today's world. Yes, my bank is putting a lot of efforts and intentions are very clear. They are communicating me, and I'm sure this is a great institutions to work with.
Yeah, excellent. So I think those who are here would have understood what needs to be done in your SOPs and playbooks from trust perspective, from media perspective, and some of the technology perspective, etc. I think we try to cover a lot of stuff. So I'm going to open it up again for the audience. Some question? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. My question is regarding the AIMS attack. So what we have learned from there? Still, we are in the 1 month, on the 23rd November, the attack
We don't have anyone from AIMS here.
Yeah,
so you'll have to limit it to those who are here.
But what we are learning from the breaches? My question is related to the breach. What we are learning?
So I think we'll have to wait for someone from AIMS here to talk about that, rather than people trying to suggest something which they're not aware of. So I don't want to take hypothetical cases here.
I can just add one point though. I think collectively as an industry, we are maturing towards accepting that incidents can happen and they will happen. I will just take one small example, and that says a lot of good things about this point. And there was recently one breach where one of the security research company was compromised. And on the day one, I saw a lot of competitor companies sending, flooding the WhatsApp messages with, hey, this company has been breached, and hey, this has happened and that has happened. On the day three, I saw the same companies sending a very different message that please be aware that Indian security research companies are being targeted. Today it was this company, tomorrow it could be we, and day after tomorrow it could be someone else. I think that says a lot of good things about people waking up to the reality and everyone agreeing to work towards a common cause to deal with this menace, because this is not something which could only happen to someone else and will never happen to you. Just stress my point.
I'll probably add one line to it, which is state-sponsored attacks are very common nowadays. Every country is going through it. Every business sector is going through it. How quickly we learn about those campaigns that are happening, right? Those threats that are happening globally, probably at your region as well. It could be impacting India. It could be impacting, you took one name, which is from healthcare. It could be happening to one healthcare organization. It can happen to another as well, right? So we've seen so many healthcare institutes getting attacked via ransomwares, right? So this is very common, how quickly we can learn about those campaigns, those target campaigns that are happening around us, and make sure our infrastructure is secure, is ready to handle those campaigns. I think that's very, very critical.
Yeah, the only thing probably I'll just add there is what is known from the public domain is that you need to, and what we've talked also here, you need to have a proper technology architecture in place if you want to make sure that some of these things don't happen. And there was, I guess, some challenges from a network segmentation perspective, etc. So those are some of the learnings anyway. So any other question? Yes, I want to give one last chance to those who have come in late and if they had a question. But if they don't have a question, that's fine.
Morning, Sanjay. It's always a pleasure to hear you. Now that certain requirements are in and most of the organizations are complying with your directives, your team is also getting probably insights from each of the constituents in India. So what's the first 6 months looked like post these certain directives in terms of insights for your team and how you're sharing with them?
No, 1 minute. This session is on breach ramifications. So limit your question to breach ramifications.
All right, sorry, then I'll pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah. So anyone else who has any question on breach ramifications?
So let's say you are managing a breach and you are managing the ramifications of a particular breach, and a subsequent breach happens, and that has been witnessed in, let's say there were a few recent examples. So it's going to be a death knell for the company mostly, and how do you manage that, and how does your playbook evolve in, let's say, after a breach has happened?
So who is this question to?
I think that's to the whole panel, whoever can.
Okay.
I can probably take the first shot at this. Bring in the right IR team. That's very, very critical over here, right? Because we might look at one breach at a time, but if we have the right IR team engaged real quickly, they can probably see that, hey, you might be, because I'll take an example. There is a ransomware, Emotet, right, which is very common in banking industry. Now, and it has evolved in the last 15 years. Now, that is the current state at which it is. When it breaches a particular organization, then it opens up communication to every other malware and say, hey, I've already successfully breached, please you also come, right? So if you have the right IR teams here, they can understand the scope of that particular breach. It's not probably only the first breach that has happened and got detected, there might be others coming our way. So involving the right team at that time to come and check your infrastructure, I think that's the place to start with.
Good, thank you. With that, I think I want to thank Samir, Arvind, Ashish, and Jaspal for being such fantastic panelists and giving us so much of gyan and knowledge early morning. So I hope the rest of the day for you guys will be good. Thank you all to the audience for being so patient and asking some fantastic questions. All the best.
Thank you so much, panelists. There you go, peeling the layers of the breach and what the ramifications are. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. That was the plenary, business continuity analysis, board communications, the cycle of blame and trust, going back to the basics, ensuring customer impact is as minimal as it can be, repairing trust, the intersections of where all of these play out. What an insightful session indeed. Now we're going to distribute and have multiple plenary and parallel tracks running. The sessions starting now are Global War and Your Cyber Frontiers at Maple 1, Cloud Native Attacks diving into the depth at Maple 2, Decade of Authentication at Royal 1, Planning for Metaverse at Royal 2, and a Town Hall with Search IN. Please note this is a closed door by invite only session. We request you to kindly not request for entry without an invite. Kindly attend the track sessions of your choice by checking the agenda, which is available just outside the hall and is also on the TV screens. You can also scan the QR codes and you can get an access into what the sessions are that are lined up. We'll see you after these breaks. Thank you.